So The Boys is officially over. And honestly, Season 5 kinda sucked. Now before you light me up in the comments, let me be clear. The finale was not a complete disaster. There were moments in this last episode that worked. And there was some scenes that actually hit emotionally as well. Especially a moment between Hughie and Butcher that has been building up for the last 5 seasons. But a few good scenes does not save a season finale that seems like it was duct taped together because it was on a deadline. Because the biggest problem with The Boys Season 5 isn't that it didn't have any good ideas, it's that the season didn't earn them at all. Like, it felt like the writers knew they wanted these big trailer moments to happen this season. Butcher versus Homelander, Hughie being forced to stop Butcher, and on paper, that all sounds great. But the road to get there was the real problem. And once you notice these things, it's impossible to ignore it. And really, that breaks down my key problem with this season. It felt like it was written backwards. They knew that this season needed to end with Butcher and Homelander in their final standoff, scorched earth fight. Like, they knew this is how this series needed to end, but this whole season leading up, there was nothing impactful that led up to this moment. And this starts me with the biggest problem of Season 5 so far, and that's gonna be V1. Like, V1 has to be the best example of the show creating a massive problem and then immediately creating a cheat code to deal with it. Like, the Supe virus was supposed to be terrifying. Like, Butcher having the virus and being able to wipe out every single Supe creates that moral dilemma. Because the question is not, can this kill Homelander? The question is killing Homelander worth every other Supe? And that includes Ryan, Starlight, and Kimiko. And all the innocent people that were injected with Compound V that didn't choose it. That is the real tension, and that is the final question that a whole season should be built around. But then the show introduces V1, the original version of Compound V that, guess what, if you have it in your system, you're immune and you're immortal. And somehow, Homelander gets V1 because him and his dad were Eskimo bros. Like, that was a huge character flip for Soulja Boy. Like, Season 3 Soulja Boy would not have done that, but we'll get to him later. And this didn't feel like natural story development. This felt like the writers being like, oh no, we have a virus that can wipe out all Supes. What's gonna happen to all the spin-offs we're creating? Because the virus could have made this final season feel unpredictable and dangerous. Instead, V1 made it feel controlled, safe, and manageable. And that's the last thing that this show should feel like. And then we have the problem of Kimiko getting Soulja Boy's depowering ability. Like, what are we doing here? Soulja Boy got this power through decades of torture and experimentation by the Russians. And then you have Kimiko getting this in a couple of weeks? Like, that is not character development, that's straight up a video game power-up. And to be clear, Kimiko is not the problem, other than whatever they had going on with her voice this season. Her character is genuinely great. Her trauma, her relationship with Frenchie, and her struggle to regain her humanity, that all works. But giving her Soulja Boy's ability this late into the game instead of maybe developing that in Season 4, it just feels like extremely lazy writing. And what makes it even more frustrating is that there was a better solution sitting right in front of the writers. Marie from Gen V. Like, Marie Monroe can legit manipulate blood, and in Gen V, it is explained that she can sense the Compound V in a person's blood. Like, imagine if Marie was present throughout the whole season and she's practicing trying to remove Compound V from people's bloodstreams. That would not only pay off everything that we saw in Gen V and all the people that invested time watching that show, and maybe she's failing at first trying to remove it, and maybe she nearly kills someone and then doesn't want to try it anymore. It would also negate the whole rush to get Kimiko to get Soulja Boy's powers in the last minute. And now suddenly the boys have a plan that's consistent throughout the season, and there's added tension. And it feels like Homelander being depowered is this cinematic universe coming together. And it would be a payoff that would be inevitable and not this shortcut that we had with Kimiko. And Season 5 had way too many shortcuts. Now, earlier we mentioned Soulja Boy. And can we just say this was such wasted opportunity with this character? Like, how do you bring back the most entertaining, important, and dangerous character and just sideline him for the finale? Like, was anyone else waiting for a cutaway of someone releasing Soulja Boy so that he could join the fight? Me personally, I thought they were going to bring Stormfront back and have her be the one that releases him, because they were mentioning her throughout the season and everyone expected her to come back. But no, I guess he's just still on display in Homelander's bedroom. But like, seriously, this is the one character that can emotionally and physically challenge Homelander. And yet his role is extremely thin in this season. And when Homelander lets him out at the beginning of this season, he flips sides way too quick. We went from this dude trying to kill Homelander in season 3 to now all of a sudden a 5-minute conversation and he flips. But even more so, it shouldn't have been Homelander who set him free. I think after Ryan almost is killed by Homelander, he should have snuck into the Vought building and freed Soldier Boy as a last effort to help raise the numbers against Homelander, which would have been way more impactful because last time we saw him, he was trying to kill Ryan. But now Ryan feels like there's no other option but to free his grandfather, someone who might kill him, but he knows can be the end to his dad. And this is the kind of emotional disaster that this show should have been cooking with. But instead, it feels like the show just brought him back for the fan service instead of the plot service. And you could remove Soldier Boy from this season and there really is no consequences from that. But speaking of consequences, I want to talk about how this season handled consequences. With one example I want to mention, and that's with the episode where Homelander gets V1 in his system. Homelander gets V1, he's now protected from the virus, and he's supercharged, which they never really represent on the screen correctly. And to the left of him is all of the boys in a forest watching this. And it ends with Butcher yelling, "Run." To then cut away to the next episode where everything's fine and dandy, they got away, I guess. Like the boys are right there in the forest and now Homelander's overpowered and you're telling me he doesn't hear or sense them? And this should have been the episode where we flipped and we're getting way more serious getting to the finale. And it should have been all about Homelander hunting the boys down and trying to kill them, and them not having any plan or backup on how to stop him. Like just imagine Homelander's flying over the trees listening to heartbeats or any sign of the boys. And you got the team trying not to breathe too loud and trying to communicate without talking. And that would have been the opportunity to actually have an impactful death with Frenchie. With the same setup as we had in episode 7 of him sacrificing himself to save Kimiko, instead of this PG-13 death that we got in episode 7. And that would just rise the stakes, especially not having him in those last 2 episodes. And you could have even set it up to they were working around Kimiko to try to get her the powers, and now without Frenchie, that option is not viable. So they have to come back to Marie Monroe to get her to be dialed in to defeat Homelander. Like this is tension and this is consequences, and that's what I wanted from this final season. And it would have made Homelander immediately feel like a threat again. Like we would have felt the consequences of him taking the V1 and being immortal now. Like the show keeps serving up these huge dramatic ingredients and it won't cook. Now to be fair, the finale wasn't completely shit. There are a few things that actually worked. And one of them is the final confrontation between Butcher and Homelander, which thank God, if you can get anything right, get that right. Like having it come down to them both being depowered and just having to fight with their fists. Like this is what we've been wanting. And finally showing Homelander for what he is, a pathetic, weak man-child who is literally offering obscene things just to get a chance to stay alive, all on live television. Like that was peak. And I think Ryan showing up in the last minute and being that last nail in the coffin for Homelander was a great way to close off his arc and finish his story, because that's what we've been setting him up for this entire series. And that is a key example of the previous seasons setting up this arc. And that brings me to one of my favorite scenes, and that is the Butcher and Hughie confrontation at Vought Tower. And this moment just feels earned. This entire series, Hughie has been dragged through the mud, and Butcher has been the one holding his hand, and he has suffered and suffered, but somehow he has remained himself. And even moments before Butcher threatens all Supes, and more importantly Starlight, Hughie still tries to pull him back and be his canary or his Lenny. And you see it almost work, but Butcher falls to his trauma and just can't believe that he could be a good person. And it ensues in a very brutal but emotional fight, to where it goes to literally a shot of Butcher about to pull the trigger on the virus, and he lets go once he sees Lenny within Hughie, but then shows Hughie pulling the trigger of the gun to stop Butcher. And in a way, there was no better ending for this version of Butcher. And to close it off, we have a satisfying ending with Hughie and Starlight finally being able to settle down and go back to a somewhat normal life. And with Hughie even making his own tech store, which is a throwback to where he started off in episode 1 in season 1. And Starlight being pregnant with their child, who they plan to name Robin, which is an homage to Hughie's girlfriend, which was the reason this all started. But even then, with a great closure moment like that, moments before, we had President Singer calling Hughie, telling him that they're reopening the job that he had in season 3, which is managing soups and keeping them in line, which he denies for a simpler lifestyle. But even though that's the end of Hughie's story, I think they're setting that up as a new beginning for others. And that's my problem with this finale. Even though Homelander's dead and Butcher is dead, and on paper that should feel massive, it somehow feels less like a conclusion and more like setting up a franchise. And the irony of this is pretty wild, because this show started as a brutal satire of the superhero franchises, and then by the end, the boys kind of became the exact machine it was making fun of. And that is why this finale feels weird. It kills the two biggest characters, but feels like it's leaving the light on for future ones to take their place. And with the show having an identity of being anti-franchise, this feels like a weird place to land. So overall, I did not think The Boys finale was complete garbage, but I just feel like it could have been way more than what we got. And the fact that I was able just to make up a few moments that would be way more impactful and fix the entire season just makes me so upset that they didn't spend more time in just perfecting this. But what do you guys think? Do you think The Boys series finale stuck the landing and it was everything you expected? Or do you feel underwhelmed and think this whole season was mismanaged? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future content. I actually made a video about The Boys after episode 3, so go ahead and check that out if you enjoyed this. But my name is Ben James, you guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!